Hey everybody, this is my 20-gallon open-topped office tank, and today we are just going to do a simple before and after water change video. You can see the water level's a little bit low from evaporation. I have topped it off recently, and I did a very minor water change about a week ago. I just took one of my jugs that I use to fill the tank up after water change, and instead of using the siphon to drain some of the water out, I took that jug and I just took a couple little scoops out with the jug and then replaced them with some fresh water. So I did a really minor water change about a week ago, and I've topped it off a couple times since my last major water change. So today's about time to do a real water change and get in there and get the tank cleaned up a little bit. You'll be able to see that I've got some dead leaves floating on the surface, and there's probably some mulm and crud and stuff down in the corners that I can get out of there, get the glass wiped down a little bit. I did just trim back the temple plant that's growing up and out the top. You can see I've got a pretty good amount of distance between it and the light now. It had grown up to the light to the point where it was shading the tank, and the tank was dark, and there was almost no point in even turning the light on from the fish's point of view. It did certainly provide the plant with plenty of light, but very little of that. It was actually making it to the fish tank, and so now you can see the right hand side of the tank is much more brightly lit and opened up. So I might trim a little more of that back once I get in there and do the water change, but we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, as I said, this is just going to be a simple before and after. So there's your before, and there's your after. You actually get a very brief look at my Apisto out on the left-hand side of the tank. In a moment, it's going to be hiding in the back underneath of the heater there. But we are getting a little brief look at it, which is unusual. Not sure why it is so shy. Apistogramma are not known for being particularly shy fish or reclusive fish. And I've had this one a while now. I got it from a viewer several months ago. And you'd think by now it would have gotten used to me being its source of food and not some sort of threat. The guppies certainly flock to the front of the glass at, the morning and the evening when they know they're getting fed. But that Apisto back there always tends to be a little on the shy side. I don't know the exact species. Again, I got it from a viewer. They were moving. They were unable to take the fish with them, and I was more than happy to take it off their hands. So there's a little bit of a look at it. Otherwise, not a lot to talk about in the water change. Did exactly what I said I was going to do. I pulled a couple gallons of water out. I put about 3 or 4 gallons of water back in. I did not top it off before I drained the water. I only took a little bit out from what was already a reduced amount to begin with. So when I topped it off, I actually wound up putting more back in than I took out. As far as the nitrates go in this tank, my regular long-term viewers will know that I put a bunch of sand in this tank, not in an attempt to create a deep sand bed, but in an attempt to see if I could generate any kind of denitrification by having a moderately deep sand bed. And it's maybe 2 inches deep. It's a really fine sand, so it should be non-porous enough that we would get a really slow movement, the capillary action through the sand that you would need to get a denitrification cycle going. And I'll say for the months that I've been sort of running this sort of pseudo experiment, I have yet to honestly say I can tell any difference whatsoever. I'd really like to be able to stand here and say that while it's not, taking care of all the nitrate, it does kind of help or something, but I honestly can't say that. I honestly don't notice a difference. It may be doing something. I can't say that it's not. But it's certainly not doing anything that reduces my frequency of needs for water changes or anything like that. It doesn't really seem to be making any kind of an impact whatsoever. So it was interesting to see if it would, and it still may in the future. You can tell it is starting to get that weird sort of black coloration, and all that grungy looking stuff is getting down deep into the sand, and so that would be, growth and everything is working its way down in there. So it may take longer than I'm suspecting. And again, I never suspected it was going to be a full denitrification cycle. I was just hoping it would reduce the need for water changes by kind of helping me out a little bit. And again, it may be, I don't know, but we're going to have to wait and find out. As far as the nitrate goes, I did test before and after, and it was about what I expected. Before the water change, the nitrate was just on the north side of being that reddish color. And after the water change, we were just on the south side of being that reddish color. So I'm still sitting right around 40 parts per million. Let's say we started at 50 and I reduced it to 40 or somewhere in that neighborhood, close enough. So again, not really seeing a huge reduction in nitrate because of that sand. I've got a fairly vigorously growing plant in the tank. And, reality, that's not a heavily stocked tank. It's a 20-gallon tank. It's got those guppies in there. It's got that apisto that you just saw. And it has one clown pleco that lives in that cave there, which is about 3 inches long. So again, not a really heavily stocked tank. And yet we still get a fairly significant buildup of the nitrate and organics. I tested the phosphate in this tank last week, and it was over 5 parts per million. And the recommendation, for whatever it's worth, is that you stay below 1 part per million with phosphate. Now, phosphate doesn't hurt the fish, but once your phosphate gets elevated, then you can run into issues with algal blooms and excessive algae growth and so on and so forth. Most people probably have extremely elevated phosphates and don't even know it, and it doesn't cause them any problems at all. Again, this tank has phosphates over 5 parts per million, and yet you don't see any algal growth or explosions. I don't have cyanobacteria growing all over everything. This tank's not all filthy and dirty. Even the glass, before I wiped it down, you could barely tell the glass needed to be wiped down. So again, having some high phosphate in the tank isn't really that big of a deal more often than not. But for what it's worth, that's what it was in this tank. So there you go. Just a little before and after look at my office tank. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you real soon in the next one.